Hey, everybody, welcome back to the podcast. Welcome back to Home Sweet Homecast, episode 7. We're so excited today to be kind of basically continuing a series that we've been doing, right, Mom? It's going to be
It
a
is.
series on how to sell your home. Are you ready for this? You love this side of the game.
I do. Listings and working with sellers is one of my very favorite things. So yeah, I'm glad we're doing this on number 7 because that's just a lucky number, right?
Hey, yeah. I mean, it's it's funny. My family is actually like super into lucky number
Mm-hmm.
7. Like my wife was born on the 7th day, my son was born on the 7th day, kind of stuff, and then their whole family on that side of the game was, and so it's just it's fun to receive the 7 luck by what do you call that? What is that? Oh gosh, where you're like A equals B, B equals C. So A equals C. That's called a theory. It's math. I'm sorry. I'm bringing up math in a real estate game. My bad, y'all.
You got
My
me. I
bad.
don't have it.
See, this is what happens when we don't talk about real estate from the get go, Mom. It's what happens.
Go down this chicken down the
Yeah,
drain.
we'll see what happens. You know, it's a good podcast. But yeah, so we're really excited about this. We're gonna do a quick little market update, y'all, just to keep. If you're sticking with us every week, we do want to make sure you're informed about what's going on in the
Right.
market, especially in DFW here, since that's where we specialize. And so, let's jump in quick with the market update. You've got a couple things. I've got one thing I want to mention, but just let's hit it.
Yeah, sure. So just ran the numbers today for our MLS and the surrounding area. So this is the North Texas MLS. And so these numbers came from that. So first of all, as of today, at the end of January, then our average sales price in our area was $427,000.
Okay.
And last year, this is what I found interesting. So last year at this time, the sales price was 402. So 402.
That was last year.
So since
Wow.
last January at this time.
Yeah.
So the end of January it was 402. That was the sales price, average sales price. So right now we're at 427.
Yeah. Sure.
So we have not, as far as statistics go, we're not backwards. So
We're
we're
not crashing.
still we're in the right direction, y'all.
Yeah.
Another interesting point is price per square foot. So at the end of January last year, price per square foot was 184. And
Okay.
so as of this year, 2023, into January, price per square foot is averaging 190. So
Cool.
again, we're up a little there.
Yeah.
So that's good news, right?
Yeah. We
And
have it.
then also,
Yep.
go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
Average days on market right now is 55 in the DFW area. But last year at this time, this is where it's really interesting. So last year at this time, it was 11. So 11 days on
Jeez.
market. Now we are at 59
Yeah.
days on market. So that's where we start to really see the difference. And that's the market that we're feeling more
Yeah.
of. The buyer demand is less.
It's
So
really
that
interesting
means,
though, because
yeah,
there's still pockets of multiple offer kind of
there
stuff. There's
are.
still
Yeah.
pockets
Yeah.
of where things go in the weekend, and so I think
Yeah.
that's really interesting because it really on the agent side of the game, it really feels very different property to property.
Hmm.
Because
Yeah.
if you're putting an offer on, if you're working with buyers and you're putting an offer in on properties that are in those multiple offer situations, it feels reminiscent. Now we're not
Uh-huh.
talking 40, 50 multiple offers like it was during that time. But it's still, it feels reminiscent of that. And so it's surprising sometimes because then you have other ones that
Yeah.
aren't that at all. The days on market are very on track for the 55 you mentioned. Like it's very weird. I mean, honestly, it's just very weird, y'all. And so you
Mhm.
just gotta
Mhm.
play the hand you're dealt, it's just part of it.
Well, it's true. And, even if you're in those multiple offer situations, some of those multiple offer situations, you're winning by going just maybe 5 or
Oh, sure.
8,000 above,
Sure. Sure.
instead of, 20 and
Yeah.
30,000,
Massive.
which we
Yeah.
were
Yep.
previously. So
Yeah. Arm
yeah,
and a leg, the whole thing. Yeah.
yeah, it's kind of a
Yeah.
spotty kind of a market. It's the best way to
Yeah.
say that. Another interesting statistic right now is percent of list price. So this is how much at closing the percent of the list price is. So if you have 100% of the list price, then that's a full price offer, right? That you
Right.
closed on. So this year is at 93% of list is what the average is. Last year it was 100%.
Okay. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
last year, the numbers were higher. You were getting a lot more above above full price offers.
Yeah, sure.
So inventory right now, 2.5 months in the DFW area. Last year at this time, it was 1 month supply of
Golly,
inventory.
golly. I
So
mean, that was
that's
better though, because at one point it was like 2 weeks, I think, right? Like,
yes,
I mean, that was
yes,
a month was improvement, which
yeah,
is crazy to think of that.
yeah, it really was. It was really a very odd market. So
Yeah,
we have more inventory, longer days on market. That's a reflection of a little less buyer demand.
sure.
But like you said, we're still getting those pockets,
Mhm.
of those multiple offers. So yeah. So it's a funny market. So it's a good time to have a good agent
That's
because
right. Yeah,
there's lots of real estate analysis that's needed right now.
yeah, totally. What else you got?
So that's all I got right now. We were going to talk
Okay.
about, I think, starting off pricing.
Yeah, well, so we'll jump in pricing. What the one thing I want to mention as far as the market update goes, we had a big breakthrough, especially with our team this week,
Mm, yeah.
when it comes to interest rates, y'all. So this was exciting. Our lender that our preferred lender that we use, one of them, we have three, but one of our main ones, he came to us and said, "Hey, we just got approved to do this program. It's really exciting. Basically, in certain areas of DFW, and it's a good chunk of areas throughout DFW." There's a chance that you could be pre-qualified and qualified for this program where you can get 2%, up to 2%, knocked off of your interest rate. And so at a 6.6, 6.4, 6.7, where we kind of have been the last week or so, it's really exciting news, because that gets you back down to the fours. And so again, we've mentioned this before in this podcast, but like, and when you look at the history of DFW interest rates, we are at like six is actually the average, y'all. So we've actually just found our way back to the average. But regardless, getting a 4% in that situation, like, and locked in at a 4%, like, that's huge, y'all. Like
Yeah.
that's something that, we hear that from people who got the 3.25 and the 2.7s. Like, I'll never get that again. And you're probably right. Like, you
Hmm.
probably won't get that
Yeah.
again. But four is pretty dang close to those numbers, and so it's exciting. So that was a big breakthrough, and so that's exciting to me because that tells me that mortgage lenders are getting smart, and they're getting, I mean, they've always been smart, but they're getting even more adjusted to this market and
Hmm.
to the interest rates to
Hmm.
help people out to do that. So that was an exciting piece of news there for anybody who's looking to buy, or any sellers out there who have thought about selling but haven't been able to do that because of the interest rate. That's at least some good news for us as we've been in this market. So good stuff. Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely.
Okay.
I'm excited
All
about
right.
that.
Well, then we're jumping to pricing. I love the way we discuss pricing with our sellers. So you jump in, and then I'll add what I can.
Okay, you get it. So pricing is one of the most important things when it comes to selling a home because price is one of the major factors that will attract a buyer to a property.
Sure.
So, of course, property condition is important as well, location, those kinds of things. But price can always solve any problem with any
Nice.
property.
Yeah.
So
Sure.
pricing solves every single problem. So the way that we price, especially in this market, so this is kind of what we call a more of a flat, or in some areas even a bit declining of a market. It's not a market that's going gangbusters like we had last year. It's not doing that. So this is a little bit more of a flat market. So you want to always price ahead of the market. So, with that in mind, we are really making sure that we flush out all of the competition
Yeah.
that
Sure.
might be happening for a property that's about to go on the market. So, we want to see what they're competing with, what's out there, and then we're going to price that property just a little, just a titch lower. And
Sure.
that way, you're the one that's the best priced, best positioned on the market.
Yep.
What that does is it lets you not sit on the market. It really attracts a lot of buyers to your
Yeah.
property, the good buyers, the ones that are strong buyers. And so that's the way to really price the property right now in this particular market.
Yeah, I love the way I've always heard you talk about pricing, and I've always thought this was effective, was time based. I mean,
Mhm,
you on top of the time base, you have your target, which I love, and you should explain that here in a second. But um, the time, like, if you are going for the highest amount for your home, like, you're probably going to trade a good chunk of time to attempt that, and you may not get that.
mhm.
The flip is also true. If you go for the lowest price, you may move quicker, but you might lose out on equity that you could have had at a better price. And so pricing is really important because you're really weighing money and time. That's kind of what's at play. And
Mhm.
so we want to shift that and play that based on the needs of the seller. If a seller needs to get moving to because they're got a new job and it's coming soon, they got to
Mhm.
get to a new place. Like obviously, time is more of a factor there, assuming they can't hold it while they go find their new place or that kinds of stuff. So there's
Mhm.
situations where each side of that makes sense. It just kind of depends on how to play that. But you've got this great like target image that you show people that I think is
Yeah.
really effective. So yeah, explain
Yeah,
that real
we
quick.
do. Well, we do. We've got a target image for when a price change is needed. So we have some factors that we figure into when a price change is needed. What we really want to do in this market is we want to really work to price you correctly so that you don't have to do a price change, so
Yeah,
that
sure.
we are
Yeah,
the ones
of
for
course.
all the buyers. Because the biggest bang you get for your marketing buck is in the first 3 to 5 days. It's
Right.
kind of like a racehorse, and
Yeah.
you're at the races and
Yeah.
all the racehorses are kind of bunched up at
Yeah.
the gate and they're just waiting for that property that says go. And
Yep.
so as soon as you can put that property out there, there's all these potential buyers that are waiting to see
They
that
jump.
property.
Yeah.
So the first that's your first week is your strongest week for your marketing. And then there's been some numbers, we've seen some statistics where the longer that the property's on market,
Oh
let's
yeah.
see, I think it's after 14 days, you only get 97% of your
Yeah.
list
Wow.
average. And if you go for 44 days, it's like 91% of list.
Wow.
So, and that takes away time that you're on the
Yeah.
market, you're having showings. So we're really strong about in this particular market, really pricing your property competitively
Yep.
so that you don't sit. The other thing is that even if you get a lot of buyers that come in that first week, if you don't get offers in pretty quickly, there's been some statistics that have been correlated with buyers that they if there's a bunch of delay between the time they see the property to the time that they put the offer in,
Yeah.
that also takes away your money. So that
Sure.
reduces the amount you're gonna get.
Yeah, of course. It makes sense.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's quite fascinating, but it depends on the market, and this is the kind of market we have right now.
Yep.
So pricing is just really key, and you want somebody who's gonna do a good thorough analysis for that.
Yeah, and even just, I mean, you take it down to the studs too. I think that's impressive because you talk about how, if you're right on the money, you'll get both showings and offers.
Mhm,
If you're just like even 2 to 3% off, you'll get
mhm.
a lot of showings, but no offers. And then if you're, I think it's like 3 to 5% maybe is
Yep.
next, then you will get some showings, and that's it. And then if you're more than that, then you don't really get any interest. And so I just even those like those small amounts of percentage, if you're just off that much
Mhm,
it can really affect, especially in this market. I totally agree with what you're saying. Like, especially in this market, this is the market to play pricing well. Like pricing, it will. The houses that I see when I work with buyers, and same thing with listings. Like the thing that matters is price. Like, are they priced too high?
mhm,
If they are, they're going to sit too long. Like it's just,
mhm.
and that's going to affect their equity that they were trying to get from the first place.
Yeah.
Versus going a little bit lower, getting multiple offers, hopefully for these homes. Like, anyways, so yeah, I think that that's always fun to see just
Mhm.
how even 2 to 3% y'all of being off of that price that really will drastically affect your ability to sell the home and
Absolutely.
your process and your experience selling your home. So it's important.
Mhm, and we get a lot of, sellers, especially sellers who haven't sold in probably 10, 15, 20 years.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So those sellers are saying, "Well, can't I just put a price out there and then, if they can offer less?"
Right.
The deal about the internet, as soon as the internet came into play in real estate, it changed all that. So
Yeah.
people don't tend to make offers a whole lot lower right now if
Yeah.
you don't have it in the correct bracket, the price bracket.
Yeah.
People just don't do that because they're
Yeah.
shopping across the board all of the properties and they're comparing them and they've got photos. So, and if your property is just way out of the range for what
Mhm.
everything else is that they're seeing, then they're just going to skip it and go on by.
Sure. Of course. Yeah. 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 Makes sense.
So yeah, pricing's
Okay.
important.
Pricing super important, y'all.
Mhm.
Super, super, super important. Okay. So you've priced it right. You have priced
Yes,
it
you did.
well.
Yes,
You had a good agent who helped you do that, right?
right.
um, then you move into receiving offers and dealing with offers. And so let's jump into that side of the game. We have received offers.
Mhm.
What's happening? What does it feel like? What's coming? How do I think about this? How do I approach this moment in the process?
So once the offer, let's say an offer or even a couple of offers come in the door, then that's when the agent goes to work and the agent is going to be contacting the lenders, making sure and confirming that the lender has really checked all of the paperwork
Yeah.
for the buyer's application. So you're going to do that. You're also going to be checking to see if there's any special requirements that buyers trying to put into the
Mhm.
offer, all of the terms of the offer, as well as the money. And then you're going to want to see a net sheet
Yeah.
because it's one thing, to get an offer, at 300,000, but it's another thing when that net amount from that $300,000 offer is a whole different number.
Sure. Of
So
course.
you want to make sure that the agent, and the agents do this, we do this, where we send out net sheets. We have net sheets
Mm.
for each offer that comes in the door, so you can
Yeah.
see what your net out of pocket's going to be. I mean,
Yeah.
that your net to you is going to be.
Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah. 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 That's
So yeah,
important.
yeah, it is because you bottom line want to know what are you taking home after the closing
Yeah.
table.
Yeah, and just, especially for people who are really like the main motivating factor they have in their transaction is making the money
Right.
from their home, whether that's to, I
Mhm.
mean, go do something with it, or if that's simply just to put it into another home for a down payment. Like that's especially what you'll care about is that net sheet. So make sure
Yeah.
you're seeing what your net sheet is, because to Mom's point, that 300K may be the higher number from what everybody else is doing, but what are the buyers paying for? Are the buyers covering things in that lower offer that actually may net you somewhere at least,
Mhm.
if not above that 300K, at that 300K, so you can compare them? You always talk about it as like, apples to apples, not apples to oranges. You want to
Yeah.
make sure that you're saying like you're not just comparing them based on the offer price. You're actually comparing
Mhm.
them based on everything, holistic approach to the offer. So I always love
Exactly.
that.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
along with that, the agent is gonna be explaining the terms. So the closing date, what kind of things are left behind, what kind
Yeah.
of things go with the seller.
Yeah.
It's gonna be things like, how long of a period of time do they wanna have for inspecting it? So all of those kinds of terms are gonna be in that offer, and those are things that could make a difference depending on the seller's situation.
Sure. Of course they would. Yeah. 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 Of
So,
course they would.
the other thing is financing. So, some types of loans are a little more difficult when it comes to appraisals.
Yeah.
Some types of loans, the buyer has less skin in the game with less cash available. So, to some sellers, that's important. So, all those kinds of things need to be talked about when the offer is looked over.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, of course. Yep.
And of course, an agent's going to tell you, "Hey, this appears to be a great offer,"
Yeah.
or they'll give you some advice as far as, "Is this an offer we can go forward on? Is this an offer that we think we'll get better in?" Just kind of what maybe we'll go back and push back and do
Yeah.
some negotiation on some of the terms. So
Yep.
yeah.
Well, and then this is the other thing. Like, if you're watching this as a buyer, like your buyer agent's relationship and the rapport they build with that
Hmm.
seller's agent is really important here. Just to flip the script for the buyer side of the game, like in this moment, like the way in which your buyer's agent has approached the seller's agent and has treated that and built that rapport of your credibility as a buyer, but also the agent's credibility, and in our case, our
Hmm.
team's credibility, and making sure to be a smooth process to work with. This is where that can actually come into play, like that relationship between buyer agent and seller's agent. This is where that can kind of play. Usually, sellers agents won't like. They're not going to like steer their clients towards offers because of a bad agent or stuff like that. But my
Hmm.
point is, this is a spot where the relationship can affect things and can help you in the long
Hmm.
run. So buyer's
Hmm.
agent, good buyer's agent is important, especially for this moment right here where we're submitting
Hmm.
offers and we're beginning to work with the listing agent.
Absolutely. Well, we've actually, it's in every occupation. You have people that are great at what they do and people that may not be. And
Sure.
so we have had agents, where
Yeah.
basically they really didn't know what they were doing.
Yeah.
And so we had to kind of help make the process go
That's
along, or the closing would not ever
yeah.
happen. So it's almost like the agent was having to work as both sides.
Yes.
So we've had those kind of situations
Yep.
before, and that's what we do, to
Yep.
to protect the seller, to try to get the
Yeah.
deal closed.
I love hyping you up to people because of that story right there. Like I've heard you have those moments where you are working, like where you are teaching the other buyer's agent
Right.
who's not on your team how to
Mhm.
do the transaction, just so your seller doesn't have the transaction fall through. Like
Exactly. Yeah.
it's, it's crazy sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
and, we were all there at one time, right, learning how to do
sure,
it,
yeah,
so
sure.
yeah. So, yeah,
Yep.
but
Good.
that's also very important because, a good agent can sometimes make or break a
Sure.
closing. So
Yeah, of
that
course.
that does
It
come
can
into
make or break
play.
a lot of things. Yeah.
Yeah, sure,
Yeah.
sure.
All right. So we've received offers. We've talked through the offers.
Mhm.
We now have compared apples to apples. Let's negotiate this offer. Let's get
Okay.
into counter offers and things like that.
Great, great. So when it comes to negotiation, you want an agent who's really got your back.
Yeah.
So that's an agent that not only helps present you the facts and the information in non-emotional kind of a way.
Mm,
So to me, one of the big value of having a real estate agent is that it helps you take a little step back from the personalizing that happens with you selling your own
yeah.
home. So it's real easy as for some sellers especially, it's really easy, especially if you have a lot of homeowner pride, that when people start negotiating and they're kind of taking money back and talking about the house and
Right.
different kinds of things, to take a lot of that personal.
Oh,
And
sure.
so, that's where an agent can really come into play and help
Yeah.
by not taking things personal, looking at it
Yeah.
more of a business kind of a matter. So yeah.
Yep.
So a good agent's going to do that for you, as well as they're going to give you parameters. So they're going to tell you, in this situation, this is normally what we see. This is very common for this to happen this way, or this is not unusual for a buyer to ask
Mm,
for this.
hmm.
They'll
Perspective.
give you some perspective. Yeah, they'll give you
Yeah.
some perspective, because most sellers don't do this every day, and so we can
Sure.
give perspective on what's the norm, and then we can also outline options.
Yeah.
So a good agent's also going to do that. They're going to outline, you could take this offer, you could take this offer. Here's the differences. Or they may say something like, I think we really ought to push back on this because this move date
Right.
is really important to
Right.
you. So as long as they know what your goals are for
Yeah.
the sale, then they can
Yeah.
really protect you and negotiate for you.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, that was my experience. I mentioned this in the first episode, but we sold one of our rental houses or our rental
Hmm.
house in December, and that was my main goal with that. I mean, I wanted to have the most equity I could because every seller does, but
Hmm.
my biggest thing was time. I just didn't want to carry that into the new year, and so
Hmm.
for me, you were great at doing exactly what we're talking about, where as as the negotiations proceeded and as they asked for things that I didn't think they should have been asking for money
Hmm.
wise, you were able to really frame that to say, hey, like if this is your goal, if this is what you're shooting for, then they may pull out here, and that puts us back on the market if we don't go with this. And so it was helpful. But I mean,
Hmm.
at the same time, I really appreciated you were never ever like letting me get screwed over in the process.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
it's it's that
Yeah.
we always talk about this with on the buyer side is where I experience the most, where it's like like we try to tell people like what this home might appraise for. Obviously, we're not appraisers, so we can't technically do that. But we try to do comparables to tell them that, and so we oftentimes say it's like, hey, like we recommend offering this. We wouldn't go higher than this because really we just don't want you putting um, more money into a house than what that house is specifically worth. And
Hmm.
so I think that's the same thing on the seller side here. And that I always appreciated was, uh, don't like you're not going to let somebody get too screwed over just because this agent is trying to take advantage or this other buyer is
Hmm.
trying to take advantage.
Hmm.
There's perspective. And so for me, as time was important, that's what mattered in that moment. But you didn't let them go out of hand with that. You didn't let them take advantage of
Right.
the seller. And so I just think
Right.
that's there. It's that balancing, it's making sure your client is from the agent side is covered, but also perspective into trying to accomplish their goals, even when it gets mixed like that, and it gets
Yeah.
complicated.
Yeah, and really helping sellers remember what they said their goal originally
Yes.
was, because when you get in the muck and mire of negotiating,
Yeah.
things can get real revved up kind of fast, and things tempers can start, and you end up not accomplishing the goal you originally wanted to accomplish.
Yeah.
So that's kind of our job, is to help keep you on track for your goal.
Yep.
So yeah, so negotiation, and of course, agents. We've been through a lot of training for negotiation skills. So there's all kinds of techniques to
Yeah.
utilize. There's, things like humanizing the seller to the buyer. There's
Mm,
things like creating scarcity
sure.
with the property and uniqueness with properties.
Yeah.
So there's all kinds of different techniques that you use during a negotiation.
Yeah.
And those are just things that agents can be trained on and can
Right.
learn and utilize for you, since this is not something that you do every day.
Yeah. Sure. Yep. It's good. All right. So if I don't accept the offer, if I don't want the offer, if I don't like the
Mhm.
offer,
Mhm.
how does that go?
So if you absolutely don't like the offer and you're okay with whatever rejecting that offer will do next, which would be either putting the property back on the market or extending some time, but you're good with that. And it's really important for the seller then to move forward and to not accept that offer. Then at that time we go back to the buyer's agent. We let them know
Mm,
the reasons why. We suggest to them also how they could improve their offer
sure.
to possibly make it one that the seller would be interested in.
Yeah.
But at that point, if they walk, they walk, and
Sure.
we go back on the market.
Yep.
And of
Hit it
course, at that
again.
point, yeah, at that point, it's important that we're real clear with anybody that comes along next as to the reason why we went back on the market, or that's if we actually went under contract. So if we don't go
Sure.
under contract, then nobody knows any different.
Right. Right.
Mhm.
Yep.
So yeah, and I have a list of I've done this for 17 years now, so I have a list of questions when I have a client. Yeah, yeah, it's a long time, right?
MBD, you know.
In dog years, it's a long time, right? um, so I have a list put together. I put together a list of questions that if I have a client who really wants to reject an offer and it seems like it's coming from an emotional place and not necessarily from a factual business place,
Right.
then I have them go through this list of 6 or 7 questions with me and just
Yeah.
make sure that they feel like that they're coming from a little more of a business kind of a place
Of
and
course.
with their
Yep.
goals in mind. Yeah.
Yep. Makes sense. Well, cool.
So yeah.
All right, and then I just appreciate this emotional awareness that the agent kind of has to have with the seller, and so just know
Yeah.
we are here to be your sounding board. We are here to be your, commiserator if it's frustrating, and wise counsel in the midst of that, hopefully, to help you accomplish what it is you're wanting to do based on
Hmm.
the situation. And so that's it helps when you trust your agent, and it helps when you like your agent, especially in moments like these. It really plays into the experience, at least for you. All right. Well, talk about inspection now. So let's say we've accepted an offer.
Hmm.
We accepted an offer, and what happens next as far as what we can expect as the seller.
So, most buyers are going to do an inspection. Not all, it's not required, but most of them will. So, they will have negotiated a certain period of time to get their inspection taken care of. And if they find anything that needs to be repaired, they can then negotiate those repairs. Now, a
Mm,
seller does not have to make any repairs when they go under contract. If
sure.
there's no repairs identified in the contract, then none have to be made.
Yeah.
So that's all negotiable. Of course, the buyer can drop out of the contract during the inspection period if they have a deal breaker of a repair that the seller won't do.
Sure.
So that's kind of the difference there. Inspections, you're going to want to make sure that the inspector has access to all the electric panels and the water heater and can get up in the attic and check
Yeah.
out the AC, all the main systems. It's usually about a 3 or 4 hour process, and the buyer does pay for that. Typically, the buyer's there, sometimes their family's there, with them as well, and then there's a report that's written up at the end, and the buyer then will look over that report with the inspector, and they'll kinda go through it, and if there's items that they really feel like are broken,
Mm,
that need to be repaired, then they'll submit requests for those, and then the
right.
negotiation goes on with the seller and the buyer about that.
Yeah. Yep.
Sometimes you can credit money. Sometimes the seller will just credit some money for the repairs and not
Sure.
have to make the repairs. And that's
Yep.
usually the best case scenario
Right.
because then the buyer can get the repair made with who they want
Of
and
course.
how they want it done.
Yep. Well, and it's not, time off your back. It's not any skin off your back. I
Yeah.
mean, the money is for sure,
Hmm.
but like you're not having to spend more time repairing your house or ripping your house apart just to get it ready to sell. Where you're
Right.
going to leave
Or
it
you're trying to
anyways.
move. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's good. Okay. All right. So we found the buyer has said that they found some repairs that were needed. Okay.
Hmm.
How do I approach this as a seller?
So when we look at the report, typically we get a copy of the inspection report so we can see how valid that request is. And then based on the repairs that are requested, we do this a lot and as we sell properties, and so we're more familiar with what's a big deal and what's not, what's a
Sure.
picky kind of thing and what's not.
Yeah.
So we can kind of advise the sellers that way. Like if this is like, this is an up to code thing, and you're not required to bring your property up to code when it's a 1970s home. So you can push back on this one.
Yeah. Or
So there's
cosmetic.
all, mhm,
Or they're
yeah,
the buyer's just trying to get money to do the flooring they want or the
right.
countertops they want or stuff like that. It's like, I don't know about that.
Right. So our rule of thumb is if it's broken and depending on the offer,
Yeah.
because it depends on was it a good offer or was it
Yes.
a lower
Yes.
offer? Because if
Yep.
it's a lower offer, well then you're not going to make as many repairs if any are
Right.
needed.
Totally.
So, but if it's broken, the seller should fix it. If it's cosmetic, you saw it when you walked through and put the offer in, so that's no. And then if it's worn, you don't replace a worn water heater or a worn AC, but the seller could consider at that point some kind of
Sure.
a money contribution for the wear and tear. So yeah. So that's kind of how we usually approach the negotiations. Bottom line is the seller gets to decide what
Yep.
he or she will do, and then the buyer gets to decide if it's good enough and if they're going to stay in the contract.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. What else?
So those are probably the main things about inspections. Repairs, if
Yep.
you agree to repairs as a seller, you don't have to do them until you have all the way up until about 4 or 5 days before closing to get them done.
Oh, sure. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. You got a little while.
You do.
Yep. Okay. Well, so then speaking of closing, there's something big that happens between inspection and closing, and that's appraisal. So
Yes.
the appraisal is kind of the next step in the process, the next big event, if you will, that we are waiting on once the
Hmm.
repairs have been negotiated and everybody's agreeable to what the plan is. The appraisal comes. Okay.
Hmm.
So the appraisal is going to be ordered by the buyer's lender, and essentially the idea is just going to be that the lender is just checking out to make sure that what they're lending, the money they're lending the buyer, is going towards an investment that it's actually worth that. So that's the goal of the
Hmm.
appraisal. And so there's a lot of different situations that can happen here where if the appraisal comes in low, so let's say that you were selling your home for, let's just say 400, okay, 400k, you're selling your home for 400k, and that's the list price, that's the offer price. You got that accepted. You were under contract for 400k, and the appraisal comes back. Let's just say at 390k. Appraisal comes back there. Basically, the way this works is that there is all of a sudden 10k missing in that deal, right?
Hmm.
And so,
That's a great way to say
some,
that.
huh?
That's a good way to say that.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, right. And so somebody has to figure that out. Somebody has to account for it to stay in the
Hmm.
contract, right? And so that can work kind of three different ways. I mean, that can be the buyer may request that the seller does that and covers that whole cost. The buyer may request that the seller splits that, or the buyer may cover them. And so that's where again negotiations begin and negotiations take place, and so we figure out all that stuff. So this can also go back to checking out those offers. There's a thing called appraisal guarantee or even appraisal waivers. And so let's
Hmm.
jump into that real quick to just update the people on that thing. So if you see those in a contract, here's what that means. Mom will explain it.
So, if you get an offer in, this would usually be in a multiple offer situation where
Right.
you would get an appraisal guarantee. What that means is that typically the buyer will set an amount and they'll say, we're going to offer you $400,000. If the appraisal comes in at 380 or better, then we'll cover any kind of gap. So if it comes in at 380, they're going to cover a $20,000 gap and they're going to pay still the seller the 400,000. So what's wonderful about an appraisal guarantee is that it really does help not to have another negotiation over an appraisal. So it
Yeah.
really does help that. You have to make sure and verify that the buyer really does have that kind of cash available before you go under contract on that. But that's a great thing to have. We had a
Totally.
lot of those in the previous market where there was 10, 20 multiple offers coming
Right.
in. It was so competitive. We're not seeing as many of those right now, but those could still pop up when you have
Sure.
these hot properties like you were talking about that are still
Yep.
going into multiples.
Yeah. And I mean, we wouldn't necessarily recommend this because you'd be overpaying for a property, but
Mhm.
like technically, to take it to an extreme to make the point, like if you're even in a one other multiple offer kind of situation and you just wanted to make sure that I mean, cleaned house and that you got that house no matter what,
Mhm.
like you could bring that in, you could suggest an appraisal guarantee. You might be overpaying. In fact, you probably are overpaying. And you're probably giving more money than you needed to. But if it's that important to you, that's always an option that's available no matter what. It doesn't
Mhm.
have to be multiple offers.
Right.
That's just when it makes sense because usually that's how you're going to beat out those other
Mhm.
offers. So, um,
Yeah, because if you don't have an appraisal guarantee, then and if you're getting a loan, then you use a third party financing addendum to the contract and you're protected by the
yeah,
appraisal. So
yeah,
you do have an out if the property does not appraise. So that's
yep,
a good thing. Keep in mind cash offers, there's no appraisal needed. And so that's why a cash offer is so attractive. They
yeah,
can close fast and there's no appraisal needed.
yeah.
So that's
No
why we
guessing.
always recommend that a seller really consider those kind of offers when they come in. But yeah, so appraisal guarantees are great. You can't really; they're harder to do on FHA and
Oh,
VA
sure, sure.
loans. You can do them with conventional pretty easily. But yeah, they're a real deal. Now in the previous market when our appreciation was going up so fast, like everything was appreciated. The home values were appreciating 18% in 1 year. Well, then the appraisal guarantee, you were going to make that back pretty fast
Oh,
because
sure,
your home
sure,
value was gonna go up within,
sure.
like,
Yeah, of
4
course.
months, right?
Yeah,
So, that's why these aren't as popular right now because the
right.
market's a lot flatter, and so it could take longer to get that money back on your
Yeah,
value.
yeah. Makes sense. All right, and then so that's the appraisal, and then as always, as we're jumping through these, if you have questions, feel free to message us, comment, any of that kind of stuff. This
Mhm.
stuff is a little, it's
Yeah,
honestly not terribly complicated, but it can take a second to click into what's happening and what stuff means. And so if you need help, if you need us to help it click in, we got your back always. So just
absolutely.
know we're always got to do that. Just reach out. All right. So after the appraisal, we're into the title search and the policy. So um,
Mhm.
this is you may be able to explain this process better than I can. I just know that this would be negotiated within the offer. You would know who was going to be paying for this moment right here in the offer. And so just make sure you're paying attention to this because these are things that will affect you, that could affect you based on your finances.
Yeah, so, it's negotiable who pays the title policy. Title policy is an insurance policy, basically, that guarantees clear title.
Right.
So if there was a title issue that maybe when they did the title search that didn't pick up, or something came to light later, then the title insurance is to help be able to pay for and take care of that issue to make the title clear.
Yeah.
So that's what that's for. A buyer
Yep.
or seller can pay it. In a regular kind of a market in Texas, typically the seller pays it,
Right.
but we see all kinds of things, and it is negotiable. It is a set percentage. It's an insurance rate, so it's a set percentage of the purchase price.
Yeah.
So title, the while the contract's being processed from the time it goes under contract until the time of closing, the title company is going to be checking all the title history out,
Yeah.
and they're going to be underwriting the policy for the title insurance as well. So that's going on in the background.
Okay. I didn't realize that process was called underwriting. That's interesting because there's
Mhm.
also the loan underwriting that's happening as well through this whole thing. And that's basically the next step and what we're waiting on, honestly, once we get through the title and making sure that piece is covered.
Mhm.
The buyer's loan goes through kind of four phases. You have the pre-approval phase where they're just able to have a general search. And then you get
Mhm.
you go through underwriting, which is usually for the specific property you're in. The loan gets approved, which is the next step that we're waiting on here, the process once we've
Mhm.
kind of figured out title and stuff like that. But the loan gets approved, and then and what's called clear to close, and so then you become clear to
Which we
close.
love. We love clear to
It's a
close.
big deal because I mean it means you're
Yeah.
headed for the closing table. Like it means the transaction is almost done.
Mhm.
Like there are very few things. I mean, there things can go wrong still, but there are less things now. There are more things behind us that could have gone wrong than ahead of us.
Mhm.
So
Yep.
um, so, and then, and then once we're at the closing table, this is the fourth stage. I'll just talk about this and then you can talk more about closing, mom. But the fourth stage of that loan process for the buyer is going to be that funding stage. And so it's gone through underwriting, it's been approved, and then it funds, which just means that the buyer is officially, the loan's essentially activated, is kind of how I think about it. It has
Mhm.
begun, and so they're able to take possession, and you, the seller, get paid.
That's
So,
right. That's
yeah.
right. Yeah, so one of the things that I usually tell people is when you get through the option period, which is that inspection period, you're about 85% guaranteed to close because
Mm,
most things, if they're going to drop out, they drop out over
yeah.
inspections.
Yep.
Most buyers do. So the next place where the percentage goes up again, hold on. The next place where the percentage goes up again is at the appraisal. So as soon as you get through the inspection and the appraisal, then you are right around like probably a 95% chance of
Yeah.
it closing. And then as soon as that buyer's paperwork comes out of underwriting, you're like 99.5.
Let's
So
go.
it's very rare for something at that
It's
stage to
happening.
happen.
Right. Right. Yep. But yeah, so I mean, you sit at the closing table. I still hear people ask, am I going to sit in front of the buyer and
Yeah.
have to meet them?
Yeah.
You aren't usually. I mean, technically, I guess you can, right? Still, like if you could do the
Nobody
same
ever wants
time,
to do
yeah.
that. Yeah.
Nobody wants to do that, and so you will pick your time. You, the seller, usually, I mean, almost, I mean, 99.5% of the time, will pick your title company. And so you'll have picked that on the beginning of the deal. And so you will know where you're closing. You'll just have to figure out a time that works for you that day to go in, sign your paperwork, and then you're just waiting for the buyers to sign if they haven't signed already, and then their loan to fund, and then the transaction is closed.
Hmm.
You've
Yeah.
done it.
And then, and,
You did it.
and
You
then,
did the
then
dang
we just,
thing.
yeah, then we just party and celebrate, right?
Yeah. Then we go nuts, y'all. Yeah.
Confetti cannon. Here we go.
Mom's got a confetti cannon that goes off at all of our closings. It's like, it's
Yeah.
obnoxious. Those poor title companies, I literally feel like a rock band who like comes into the hotel, and like trashes the place and then checks out the next day. 'Cause it's like, explodes. I try to clean up and they're always like, I got this. I'm like, really?
Right.
Like, I'd be glad to help you clean this up. And they're like, no, just go
Mhm.
ahead. I was like, okay, are you, if you're
Yes,
sure.
yes. Yeah,
But yeah,
they're
we go
fun.
nuts. It's something to celebrate, y'all. This is a big deal. Um,
It is,
it
it's a big deal.
it's just it's an excuse, y'all, to just, have fun and be excited about an experience that you just went through,
Mhm.
and
We
hopefully you
take
went through, enjoyed it, hopefully it wasn't too stressful for you,
we
so
take
it's worth celebrating.
pictures, we take video, we do all the things. So, yeah, it's
Yep.
always fun. And,
Mhm.
the thing to remember about possession, so you wanna follow whatever you negotiated in the contract. So what that means is that, if you negotiated that you're gonna leave behind the stained glass window that's
Oh,
in the
sure.
living room, then
Sure.
those are the things that you leave behind. So the other thing is that you're going to, as a seller, you want to kind of, you want to clean up, you want to like patch holes in the wall, leave the paint colors, leave any extra flooring, leave any extra brick, things like that. Just kind of think about what would you want to move into and how would you want to move into the home. I've
Right.
had some sellers that leave, a bottle of champagne in the
Oh,
refrigerator,
really? That's
or
cute.
they'll leave notes, for the buyer that says,
Yep.
"This is my lawn guy, this is my pool guy, and all that income. This is my favorite place to eat Italian." Those kinds of things. So those are always wonderful things for you to do with a buyer. They appreciate
Yep.
that quite a bit.
Yep. 'Kay,
So,
y'all.
and sometimes there's a lease back. So
Oh, yeah,
sometimes the
true.
seller stays after closing and becomes a tenant.
Yep.
And so there's a whole different kind of way to do that possession. But sometimes there's a lease back. And so the buyer will kind of wait until the lease back is over for the seller. And then the seller will move out and the buyer will move in.
Yeah. Yeah. But the seller knows that their house has been bought, and so
Yes.
that's
Yeah. The
that's a
seller
great
does
gift.
get paid.
Yep.
They
Yep.
certainly do.
'Kay, y'all.
So, yeah, it's a great process. It's stressful for some. It can be very easy sometimes with no glitches, problems, or anything. And you're like, wow, that was the easiest thing I ever did.
Sure.
Everyone's a little bit different, just like
Yeah.
every situation's different. Um, but yeah, it's a pretty simple process overall.
Yep. Yep. I think the biggest takeaways for people should be, keeping sight of the goals through the whole
Hmm.
process. What's your
Hmm.
goal? Staying focused on that, so that even when things get maybe frustrating,
Hmm.
or stressful, no matter what, we stay focused on that goal, because I think that's going to help us get through those things and make the right
Yeah.
decisions throughout it. I think that's a
Absolutely.
big one. I think really honestly, y'all, at the end of the day, one of the best things your agent's going to do for you as you're selling your home, we talked about this last episode, but it really is just the marketing, y'all. That's a big part of it. That's not all of it for sure. It really is also the experience and things like that. But marketing's a lot of it, because you want your property in front of as many people as possible,
Mhm.
so you can get as many offers as possible, and
Mhm.
hopefully drive the price up for your home.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, and
so
with
I
that, you
think
want
those
it.
are
Yeah, I think with that too, you want an agent who's going to know how to talk to the other agents and talk to
yes,
the buyers
yep,
to help keep you the highest price possible. Yeah.
yep, yeah. Agreed, totally agree. And then honestly, I think just what I would say personally for me that's important is really just, man, celebrate. Like when you get to that closing table, like celebrate, celebrate big, because it's
Mhm.
something that's exciting. You've just, I mean, hopefully you come into some money, or whatever your situation is, but just it's something worth celebrating, because it only happens a couple times in life for most people, and so it's just a
Mhm.
big it's a big moment. Use it as a chance to go have a fancy bottle of wine, or gosh, like have a party in the living room before you've put the sofa into it. I mean, whatever you got to do, right? Like all the things. So yeah, it's good. Celebrate it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And
Uh,
of course, we would love to celebrate with you.
oh, always. Yeah. We are fun. We're party people. We're party people.
We do. We
Yeah.
like to celebrate little things. It's
Yeah. Big time.
making memories, right?
Yep. Big time. Yep.
Making memories.
All right, y'all. Well, that was episode 7 of Home Sweet Homecast. Mom, anything else before we sign off? Because we're cool like that.
Because we're cool and we sign off.
That's right.
I love signing off. That's always fun. No, no, just um, no, I have absolutely nothing.
All right, cool. Cool.
I just,
No, we
yeah,
just
no, I don't have anything. I just want to
always need
say,
the opportunity. That's good. All
yeah,
right, y'all. Well,
no, I have
as
nothing.
always, each and every week, we just ask that, if this is something that's valuable for you,
Yeah,
gosh, like, subscribe. That helps us get this
please.
podcast out into the world.
Yes.
Comment, because we do love hearing what you want to hear more about. Let us know if there are things you want
Mhm.
us to go in more detail about. We'd be glad to do episodes based on your interest. And so just let us know those things.
Yep.
Gosh, and besides all of that, please just know that we want to keep making this for you. We're excited to keep making this for you, because one, it's fun for us to
Mhm.
do this, but also we're just hoping that this is really valuable for people out there. And so feel free
Yes.
to, if you got a friend who's selling a house, I mean, this is good information for them to have even before they're into the hiring game or getting their house ready game, right? And so feel free to just text these things to them. So be glad to be a resource for them if that's helpful. But as
That's right.
always, thank you for watching Home Sweet Homecast. We love doing this, and we'll see you next week.
Yes. Thank you for watching and keep watching.
That's right.